So Switch 2 pre-orders went live not too long ago, and it went about as well as expected. It was pretty chaotic overall. That's not to say there aren't folks who've successfully managed to get their pre-orders, but websites would go down, or you'd need to refresh them, or, buttons wouldn't work, or you'd see errors and server issues because of the sheer demand and the amount of people who flooded websites like GameStop and Target, Walmart, Best Buy, so on and so forth. I, on the day off, on the hour of, had all of these tabs open, and I struggled with most of them. Managed to get a pre-order on Target, but it involved a lot of spamming place order because I'd hit that button and there'd be errors for some reason. And then on Best Buy and Walmart, there were queues, but none of those queues ultimately ended up panning out. And then with GameStop, hours later, it was just kind of a free-for-all, but server crashes and the like prevented any sort of ability for a lot of folks to be able to pre-order from GameStop's website. Though, if you go in-store, you might have a better chance. That's something that a lot of people forget. You can go in-store, and there's a separate stock for that. But with all said and done, yeah, a lot of headlines talking about how Switch 2 pre-orders were a total mess, even if folks eventually managed to get hold of a console, though not everyone was so lucky, and that in large part has to do with the fact that scalpers no doubt have come in and collected as much loot as possible for them to be able to resell and to make some kind of profit off of this high demand, low supply product. But yeah, as you can see right now, Switch 2 is sold out everywhere. If you go to Best Buy, it's saying coming soon or that it's out of stock. If you go to Target, it's out of stock. I'm showing only the Mario Kart World bundle, but if you go to the regular base Switch 2 package, same thing, it's all sold out. Walmart, out of stock. We got GameStop here, not available, so on and so forth. And amidst all the chaos, retailers like GameStop had to put out statements such as, "We're seeing overwhelming demand for Switch 2, which is causing some site issues. In-store pre-orders are open and running smoothly. Our team is actively working to fix it. Hang in there. We'll keep you posted." And then it didn't take long before GameStop just full-on said that pre-orders for Switch 2 have sold out online, though they're still available in-store. So if you want a chance of pre-ordering Switch 2 to get it on launch day, you might want to check out some GameStop stores near you and see what they got in stock. Yeah, scrolling down through the comment section, you can see a bunch of folks discussing their experience of, being able to add the product to their cart, but not being able to check out, and just having issues with the website in a way where even if you showed up exactly on time, it was just kind of a bit of a lottery in terms of whether you were the lucky one to be able to completely get through a purchase process. Now, another option is you can go to Nintendo's website and you can register for them to inform you when Nintendo itself is able to ship you a Switch 2 unit directly. You can pick between the Mario Kart World Bundle or the regular base Switch 2, but do keep in mind that especially at this stage when so many people are likely registered, it's possible that if you do register through Nintendo directly, then invites for its own Switch 2 sales may arrive after launch due to the high demand. And invitations for those who register apparently will start going out May 8th in the US, so keep an eye out for your emails if you've managed to register long before the big wave of pre-orders started to go live. And then there are some outlets like Amazon here who have not put up a Switch 2 listing yet, and then there are some outlets like Sam's Club and Newegg that have Switch 2s kind of up and listed, but they have not sold them yet. The pre-orders for Switch 2 have not gone live on these websites. These are two outlets to keep an eye out for if you had no luck with the other major retailers. Now, I previously brought up Scalpers, and that's a significant part of today's story because it concerns a way in which the internet is essentially trying to fight back against scalpers or make their lives more difficult. Scalpers with their bots and software and their macros and you name it, they have the ability to make purchases faster than any human being is capable of, obviously, because they're using essentially machine. And already if you go to eBay, you will find that there are tons of Switch 2 listings. But in the mix of all that is something rather interesting. So if you go to eBay right now and search for Nintendo Switch 2s, you'll find a bunch of listings that have really reasonable price points. You can see right here, the Mario Kart World Bundle is being sold at an MSRP of $500. Hell, some are being sold for cheaper at $450. So it's a very strange situation where you're like, why are the prices here so reasonable when scalpers usually mark up their prices? Well, if you look at all of these listings, you can see that at the end of the title, at the end of the name of the product, you'll find a read description label. So right here, this $500 listing for the Mario Kart World Bundle of Switch 2 says read description. Scrolling further down, please read description. And that's especially common in listings where the prices are in line with the MSRP, but there are even some that are marked up prices that still say that you should read the description. So for example, right here, we have a $700 listing for the base Switch 2 that also says, please read description. And so what happens when you go into these listings and actually read the description? Well, you will find messages such as this. So right here, we have one example of many. Scrolling down and reading the description, you'll find the following text. Listing for scalpers/bots, selling a photo/picture of the new Nintendo Switch 2 console. Do not buy if you want the physical system. You're paying $500 for just a photo or picture of the new Nintendo Switch 2 console. Buy at your own discretion. No refunds. And you can see that going to other listings of Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders that have the read description label, all of them kind of say the thing. They're just selling a picture, a printed picture of the console rather than the console itself. And they highlight how this is primarily meant to kind of make life more difficult for scalpers. Here we have another one, listing for scalpers/bots. Here we have another one, listing to prevent non-human system/resellers, absolutely no refunds. So yeah, there are tons of these listings, as you can see, to the point where a lot of scalpers actual, pre-orders where they would ship the actual product at a significantly marked up price. All that's kind of getting buried a little bit, though it is worth noting that this does break eBay's terms of service, so they are cracking down on this stuff. So, for example, right here is an older iteration of this page. This is the refresh version where some of these listings are still up. But if I go to like an older version of this search and I try to see what this product entails, you'll see that this has been removed by eBay. But that is not stopping a lot of these listings from still cropping up. But you also find that generally there are a lot of listings that are legitimate folks who did pre-order the console and are just selling them at marked up prices ranging from $600 to $800. So yeah, the scalping scene is alive and well with the Nintendo Switch 2, unfortunately, with an attempt to try to bury that stuff. Now, I don't know how effective this method will actually end up being. On one hand, because the listings for Nintendo Switch 2 on eBay is flooded with stuff that essentially you are just getting, not the product itself. It might make searching for a legitimate pre-order or, a legitimate scalper listing with marked up prices just more confusing for the average Joe. And because all of this altogether looks like a scam and you don't know what's a scam and what isn't, or, what's a legitimate listing and what isn't, it just might disincentivize your average Joe, folks who, are a little more skeptical about this stuff from actually spending money on an eBay version of the Nintendo Switch 2 or an eBay listing of the Nintendo Switch 2, given the potential of purchasing something that isn't the legitimate product. But on the other hand, for those who are engaging with this tactic, it's a matter of being able to produce enough listings at a faster rate than eBay is able to remove them, and eBay has been removing them pretty quickly, combined with the fact that what if there is some average Joe who does end up actually making a purchase and not reading the description, not realizing that these listings are actually just, anti-bot, anti-scalpers listings. And, they keep saying no refunds and whatnot, though I imagine they can contact eBay and dispute that. But I wonder if at the same time it ends up doing more harm than good if the average Joe's going in there looking at just the prices for the Switch 2 listings and not reading the description and making purchases under the impression that these are legitimate listings and not listings that are intended to fight back against scalpers and bots and make their lives more difficult, or making, searching for legitimate Switch 2 scalped listings more difficult. But the fact that there's any sort of activity happening on that front does highlight that we are living in a time when people are getting more and more sick and tired of scalpers and are doing anything they can, trying to find any means that they can poke at against scalpers. So the real way to fight back against scalpers would be if retailers actually set up systems that are sensical and that do aid in fighting back against scalpers. But from what I could tell, based on my purchase experience of the Switch 2 on Best Buy, on Target, on Walmart, on GameStop, and other retailers, those who have not gone live with their Switch 2 pre-orders yet, I don't sense that they're doing a whole lot. Nintendo did try to implement a system where if you want to have priority when it comes to these invitations on their official website of purchasing a Switch 2 directly through them, you do need to meet certain criteria, like having a Nintendo Switch online account and having an account for a certain period of time and having played a certain number of hours of games on the Nintendo Switch. If you meet those criteria, then when it comes to Nintendo selling Switch 2s directly, the priority will be the fans. And so with these criteria in place, it's more difficult for scalpers to be able to take advantage of the Nintendo Switch invite system. But when it comes to retailers and their just lack of consideration when it comes to like implementing security systems against scalpers and not having those in place, yeah, scalpers had just, a feast, essentially. But yeah, regardless of the outcome of all of this, fuck scalpers. I think that is something we can all universally agree upon. And hopefully the scalping situation is nowhere near as bad as it was for the PlayStation 5, where at one point, 10% of all consoles went to scalpers and the like. And there was research done analyzing the scalping situation for PlayStation 5. And the amount of money that scalpers made from that and just the lack of security measures surrounding it where, 10% of all consoles within that time period went to scalpers. That was ridiculous. I hope Switch 2 is nowhere near that bad. But given retailers' inability to be able to kind of put proper security measures in place, even, in the year 2025, when you think we would have found some kind of solution or some way to significantly mitigate scalpers, it's looking like, right now, scalping will be pretty bad given the level of demand on the Nintendo Switch 2, which currently, based on various, reports from analysts and the like, it's expected to be the best launch for a video game console ever based on the demand that we're seeing so far. But I'm curious to hear from you guys what you think about this anti-scalping kind of attempt that is being made on eBay with the flood of, the redescription versions of Nintendo Switch 2 listings that highlight that, this is not the actual product. It's just an anti-bot, anti-scalper method that aims to bury the actual scalpers listings. Do you think that, that was a valiant attempt? Do you think it does more harm than good? Do you think it's something that will work in the long term? And what's your experience been like when it comes to trying to pre-order a Switch 2, if that is something you attempted to do when pre-orders went live? And what do you think Nintendo and retailers need to do better to help mitigate the scalping situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.